apare într-un minut, două după ce o transmit. Acum e cam odată la 20 de secunde faci un bloc nou, 40 secunde cu bloc nou. Pe alte blockchain-uri ca Ethereum nu poți să pui și bani, și NFT-uri, și script într-o singură tranzacție. Poți să faci un loop, o chestie, de exemplu, să creezi un token sau să faci un swap sau alte chestii care să fie mai practice, care să mai discutăm. Pe Cardano, pentru că el e ETXO-based, care înseamnă Bitcoin. ETXO-ul ăsta poate să conține mult mai multe lucruri decât celelalte blockchain-uri care de obicei sunt account-based. Asta e ETXO-based. E mult mai restrictiv. ETXO-ul ăsta, când începi să joci și reușești să faci mult mai mult cu mai puțin timp și cu mult mai ieftin, de 10 de 100 de ori mai ieftin, de 1000 de ori mai ieftin este decât Ethereum.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so now I think we are moving into what I think is the more exciting segment of the day. And I just put on an alarm to tell me when it's 12:15, because I know I won't be able to cover everything here. But I'm gonna do a deeper dive into blockchain as digital infrastructure and then highlight some really interesting enterprise use cases. And yeah, I think you'll really enjoy this segment. But first, I'd like to address some of the questions that I had when we were doing the Q&A and on the break. So one thing when we think about blockchains, what I said earlier was that we need to make sure it's secure, that it's scalable and decentralized. Well, this here is actually an evolving process. So back when the Bitcoin blockchain was first created, there's been some advancements to how it operates now to try and solve these three criterias. And that's the same for all blockchains, that they try to be set up differently in order to optimize on all three areas. And so we can kind of label this into like first generation, second generation, and third generation blockchains. Similar to like how your iPhone exists today. You know, I have like iPhone 18. I think it's iPhone 18 now. I don't know the number. But it gets better, right? And if you think back when you had a Nokia phone, a Nokia, that had a very basic feature set. It was only designed for calls, whereas an iPhone is still a cell phone, but it's designed for many other applications. And everything here, though, has some similarities. Peer-to-peer infrastructure. On Ethereum, this was launched in 2015. It enabled programmable applications. So it has a feature called smart contracts. And smart contracts was really the process to say, we want to use a blockchain for more than just financial payments. And so how do we add data to a blockchain? And it also introduced proof of stake. And then Cardano as well provided a lot of core research on proof of stake. And it's designed more on energy efficiency, but I'll show you what that means. So first thing is about, okay, what is this consensus mechanism? Okay, so this is a verification process that every single blockchain has. It's an algorithmic process that's built into the blockchain that governs how you access the network, how you access the history of the transaction data, how you're able to add a new block. Everything is based on the consensus mechanism. So you can say that this is the brain of a blockchain. Let's see. It's also the process here that validates the correct copy of the history. And so sometimes you have what's called the longest chain. And the longest chain is basically when there's multiple transactions being submitted at the same time, what version of this is the correct version? With that process, you sometimes have what's called a rollback. And so like a transaction may have been submitted, but in a very short time frame, like 20 seconds or less than 1 minute, that transaction may be reordered. But it's a very technical point to consider. Now, for Cardano, I'll speak on what energy efficiency really means. But there's been so much research that was done and thinking about on the entire design of a blockchain. How do we ensure that it is secure? How do we ensure that it is scalable? How do we ensure that it is sustainable? So for the energy footprint that's attached to it, right? Because what we cannot have is a situation where you're using a blockchain and then 10 years later, the size of the blockchain is too large to manage. So we really need to think very deeply on these concepts of scalability. We also have a much more flexible approach to creating data records and assets. So it's no longer the model that you must use a smart contract. Okay, so I'll play a small video that will kind of describe a bit about the game theory behind proof of stake and the selection process for, okay, who actually creates the next block. And I hope the video is going to work.
Inevitably, alternative consensus mechanisms began to emerge, exploring ways to address shortcomings with proof of work. One such alternative was the proof of stake consensus algorithm, which was first minted on the Bitcoin Talk Forum in 2011.
Can you hear okay? Can you hear everything okay?
There are also different implementations of proof of stake. More about that later. How does proof of stake POS work? Proof of stake algorithms use a random election method to select a node that will be the validator of the next block. Who is chosen is based on a combination of criteria that can vary by blockchain, but generally include staking duration, amount of stake, randomization, and node strength. A validator is a generic term, but think of it as the entity responsible for validating the next block on the chain. On Bitcoin, this is the miner, or mining pool. On Ethereum, it is the stake pool that is the validator. Also, note that with proof of stake, blocks are said to be forged, not mined. The proof of stake system usually uses transaction fees as a reward, although additional incentives can be offered. Users participating in the forging process must commit a set amount of coins in the network. This process is more commonly referred to as staking, and these coins represent their stake. Stake size determines the chances of a node being selected as the validator to forge the next block. The bigger the stake, the greater the chances. A little like a lottery, the more tickets you have, the greater your chances of holding the winning ticket. Different methods are used to ensure a random selection process, such as the randomized block selection and coinage selection.
All right. This video and the screen should not be green. Let me see. Okay. Mainly, this video is part of Cardano Academy. And so Cardano Academy, we offer this 8-hour training course that really explains all of the fundamental technical components of how blockchain works. And this is free courses. And so if that's something you're interested in exploring further, very happy to share this information with you. And we also have like a trainer program as well if you're interested in more like in-house courses.
These are online courses?
Yes, it's online material. This is like a study at your own pace. So we have tons of videos and questions to help people understand blockchain fundamentals. And at the end, we actually do have like a certified test that's offered on Pearson VUE. And so you can receive a certificate for understanding the fundamentals of blockchain.
You said this is free of charge?
Yes, to take the test, I think it's $50 US for the test, but the courses are absolutely free. And so we work very hard in building out several more hours of content on different themes. One area that we can actually highlight under MiCA is the sustainability of a blockchain. And MiCA frameworks, when they consider, okay, is your blockchain sustainable? And they have some benchmarks to follow for these indicators. So some of them is like electricity consumption, and then we have the size of a carbon footprint. So how much electricity is being generated from a blockchain network. You also have other things about like the marginal power per transaction. And you'll be surprised actually about how many different indicators you can measure on a blockchain. But we do have a very granular level of understanding the impact that using blockchain infrastructure has. And these numbers are kind of in line with other proof-of-stake blockchains at having a very low carbon footprint. Bitcoin, on the other hand, because it's proof of work, has a very high carbon footprint. I just want to introduce this topic to you. And so one of the things about Cardano is that it's kind of been developed in different stages. So first things first, as we thought about the consensus mechanism under Byron, so we call it. Then we think about participation, or the process of having a copy of the blockchain, submitting a transaction, being a validator, that process. Then we look at the feature set called Goguen. So what do I put on a blockchain? How do I use it? What is the scalability like for a blockchain? And then the overall governance. So how do we add a new feature? How do we make decisions regarding the transaction fee size? Because one of the risks of a blockchain is that you have to pay for every transaction. And that price is paid in a cryptocurrency. And that cryptocurrency changes up and down, right? So even today with Bitcoin being valued at $100,000, the transaction fee for Bitcoin has not gone down in nominal terms. It's a constant. So it's a very small amount of Bitcoin, right? But so we want to be able to manage this. Let's say for the price of ADA right now is 0.66. If we reach $100,000, we definitely need to figure out a way of governing, okay, well, let's lower the transaction fee for the network. There are many other rule sets that goes into this, but that's all part of the governance on a blockchain infrastructure. And here there are thousands of people who are actively contributing to the growth of the Cardano blockchain. We even have a constitution, as if we were a country that's kind of managing the expectations on market participants. Okay, so let's dive into some different case studies and initiatives. So this part here is really the culmination of my last 5 years of working at Cardano Foundation. So when I first joined, the Cardano blockchain did not have any features that were accessible. So my role was actually working with all of our engineers to assess the different functional requirements for launching an application on Cardano. It's a really fun time and crazy. You know, I didn't have gray hair when I first started at Cardano Foundation, just so you know. So when we're thinking about enterprise applications, we try to answer like 4 questions. Do I have sensitive data that is required for third-party verification? Does my business model involve a variety of digital touchpoints? And does the industry benefit from a network effect for shared infrastructure? And do regulations or industry standards, do they increase the need for transparency and authentication? If you answered yes for each question, then you might benefit from using blockchain in a very big way. So we have tokenization, and tokenization is the representation of real-world assets on a blockchain. Normally, this is called a token, or sometimes a data record. Okay, who can tell me what this is on the left? Very good, you're a very smart audience. What's the most famous apple in Moldova? iPhone? What's a real apple in Moldova?
I think it's golden.
Golden, okay. So I assume when you go to a grocery store, you can easily tell this is a golden apple versus some other apple. What about in the digital context? What information do you need to share with people to let them know this represents golden apple? And so when we start thinking in the context of digitization, the way we communicate about things we know very well in the real world, you know, there's a different way of translating this information digitally. So this is often what's on a blockchain. And this is a data hash of the word apple. And that is literally what would be most applications. But it's not good enough. I can't really understand a data hash, and just because it says apple, I need to know that this is actually golden apple. If I'm going to buy this digital version that gives me access to the real one, there must be more information available. So what blockchain really allows you to do is to work with this, and you can trust that this is accurate information and verify that the contents are real. Accuracy and being real are 2 different modules of how you can implement a solution on a blockchain, but both are very important. So we need to understand that a transaction on a blockchain is not necessarily the same thing. On Bitcoin, the size of a transaction is 50 bytes. So you have like a 50-byte info memo that you can leave as a message. And I could say in my message, happy birthday, or I add data hash that's 50 characters long, or 50 bytes, and that the hash is Apple. So I'm putting Apple on the Bitcoin blockchain. Ethereum is not much bigger than that. In Cardano, we can have one transaction of 16,000 bytes. So now I can actually think about different building blocks to what should I do to describe golden apple that's on a blockchain. What 16,000 bytes of data means is that we can have the first chapter from the book War and Peace. It's a very big book, first chapter. That can fit in one transaction. And so now we start thinking about descriptions for payments. What information do we require to be submitted with a cryptocurrency payment? We can think about these data records. What else should I include besides a data hash? Same thing for digital identity or a data asset. We can really build out these rich applications. And so this is a very key advancement in the usability of blockchain technology, because simply a data hash is not enough. Now, this has widespread impact. We're talking multiple industries. We're looking at real estate. We're looking at ticketing. We're looking at merchandise. We're looking at the gaming world. We're looking at digital art. We're looking at physical products like apples, like wine. Anything for real-world assets must follow the same approach. And so this is what I have defined. It's Jeremy's book of knowledge about what are enterprise-grade features for real-world asset tokenization. And you can combine all of these into one transaction to represent that apple, right? So first thing is identification of economic actors. So who is the supplier? Who is the merchant that's selling it? I might need to know this. Use of commercial and compliance data. So for this description of the apple, is there a data standard that exists that I can use that everyone is familiar with already that says, this is how we describe an apple digitally? Industry standards and off-chain data storage. So what am I putting on the blockchain? What am I storing on my company server? And how do I link these two together? And is there a standardized approach that says, this is how we represent off-chain data that is having a blockchain record attached to it? Verify data accuracy. There needs to be some sort of process that gives us this check mark that allows us to look at easily. I pull up a digital asset, and yet it is definitely golden apple. I can trust this check mark. Same way I can trust my LinkedIn page has been confirmed to be real. Privacy controls. So for third-party verification, do we have a process in place that gives you access to the off-chain data? So for the sensitive information, how do we give people access to this? Just because you create a blockchain record, like the data hash of an apple, I may have a system that says, well, you come to me, and I will prove to you that that is real. But now I am choosing which third party I'm going to share this information with. And then, of course, authenticity. now I know the information is accurate, but is this digital asset the real digital asset? So if I make a digital asset, I can have two. I can have one that's golden apple, and now I'm a criminal, and I'm going to create the counterfeit version of that. So we need a process to go through authentication on who made this digital asset to begin with. So, as a question for the audience, and if you don't mind to use the handy Slido tool, if you had to choose which one is the most important, which one of these 6 would you say we must have? And there's no wrong answers, just for everyone to know. This is not a test. So, there's just your gut feeling. What do you think would be the most important? All right. I'll give you guys maybe 10 more seconds. Okay. So most people are believing authenticity and integrity and data accuracy, privacy. Nice. In reality, some of these are very well connected. So for authenticity and integrity, now what we're really looking at doing is tracking data and supply chain actions on Web 2 data storage layers and figuring out how do we take that data and create a Web 3 application. So that very much relates to data standards. So do we have an application standard that says this is what is required for us to create this digital apple? And for verifying the data accuracy, mostly this means that we will take, like how a blockchain works today, there's data hashes for every block, and there's digital signatures that kind of signs who has created the block. That's unique and cryptographic. But what it's not is providing you information on who did it. So when we build out a real-world application for verifying data accuracy, we have a data hash, and then we have digital signatures based off of the valid digital identity solution. So wouldn't it be cool if here, the digital identity solution that's being developed in Moldova, if that was somehow connected to the verification process for golden apples issued on a blockchain? So these are some type of the techniques to think about and how they relate to one another. Okay, so is it more clear on what are the required components for building enterprise applications? And if you answer 0, it means I'm scared. And if you have a big happy face, it means you have learned a few things. Great. We have a much more rapid response on this. And nice. It looks like most people are happy with this explanation. Let's try to make everybody happy. And I'll do that by going through a few different examples. Okay, so first I want to talk about is digital product passports. What actually is this? And how do we create transparency with compliance data? So a digital product passport. This is a structured set of product data that's accessible in an electronic format to provide comprehensive and traceable information regarding the product's origin and its life cycle. So you create this product ID based off of the supply chain and the life cycle of the product. This is being especially important for EU regulations, which is known as Eco-Design for Sustainable Products, or ESPR. And this framework that's being delivered right now has three major goals on data transparency, data accuracy, and open data principles. And so for open data principles, this is to where you have multiple supply chain actors can actually review and agree on the data standard for a digital product passport. So there needs to be a process for how everyone who's involved in Golden Apple can define what that data standard is. And so this is looking also at accuracy for ESG aspects. And so not are we looking at solely the farm that this was on, or the seeds that were used, were there chemicals used. Now we're also expanding the scope for trade tech, and we're looking at ESG requirements such as, was there forced labor? What's the environmental footprint related to the farm? Manufacturing, production information, the waste involved, recycling. It becomes very, very, very extensive. And this becomes a requirement that we must have processes in place that allows us to digitize and share all of this information. Now with Blazor Labs, we have discussed this even further about the critical components of digital product passports. And now we can see that this is very full on the supply chain. So we also concern about technical documents. We look at different compliance standards, the authenticity guarantee, who's creating these documents, who's issuing a digital product passport. Is there a regulatory body that oversees that issuance? Well, that issuance of the regulatory body, that's the actor for economic identity that we need, right? All of that needs to be ensured. The data on the origin, the materials, the manufacturing use. So it is a complete process. We have a timeline, and where all of the regulations will go into effect by 2030. So right now we have basically the standards, the European standards by December of this year will kind of be launched. And then there's going to be what's called the delegation acts. Delegation acts is to say, okay, for specific industries, this is what we are defining for that entire life cycle of data. And food and beverages, this will be published in January 2026 and then go into effect July 2027. So right now is a really great time to be understanding how do we create digital product passports. This goes for all finished products and semi-finished products that are being sold into the EU market. And by semi-finished, that means if it is, like unfinished good, but I'm still selling to the EU, I must follow these requirements. So what must you have is you must have a physical marker and a physical point of identification on packaging. Perhaps it's a QR code, it's an NFC chip, RFID tag. You also need to have access to the digital product passport, which not only does it mean that there's a consultation on the identity standard, but then you need to think about where is this data made publicly accessible. So where is the digital product passport registry? And also there's another tool for a public web portal. So a public web portal allows anyone to search and explore the off-chain data information related to digital product passports. Now, there's a big role here the blockchain can play into supporting digital product passports. And I don't think we have really the time to, in this session, to kind of cover each one in great detail. But if I pick some topics, interoperability is a very big one because for interoperability, we're looking at data sharing. And like, how do we share information with different supply chain actors? And what we might be wanting to share is this verification data. So certain aspects like, this has gone through a check for labor, this has followed certain processes for recycling. Like having that information available on a blockchain, it makes it easy for another IT system to understand and interpret this information. And also define a mechanism to access the open data that may not be on an EU web page. Also for regulatory compliance, blockchain can facilitate real-time reporting and auditing for regulatory bodies. So it's by nature, it is publicly available data records. And so if we have like these comprehensive digital passports produced on a blockchain, we can take every single component and integrate that into digital product passports. And yeah, just to highlight here, this is really end-to-end supply chain tasks. So there's responsibilities for the manufacturer, for the importer, for the distributor, and other actors. And if you do not meet the requirements, there are sanctions that occur. Okay, so in the diamond industry, we can look at creating a digital product passport for what's called the Kimberley process. And Kimberley process is an 85 country member organization that relates to the production and sale of diamonds worldwide. And for here, we understand that there is a specific flow that happens across the supply chain, from mining, government offices, industry certification, the manufacturing, and the cut diamonds. So this process, we can try to determine, okay, how do we create tokenization of that information per diamond? So here we can create these, what's called a verifiable credential. And it helps us to make this digital twin of the supply chain. So what is the original uncut diamond? And then how does that flow to the the cut diamonds from that. And so now we start having this chain of information that we can source any diamond. Thank you for turning on the AC. Back to its origin. The other thing that's really nice about this is that let's say we have diamonds from India, and now there's a sanction on the sale of diamonds from India. But the diamonds are already in the jewelry stores. So how can we easily notify the jewelry stores that, hey, any diamond that's from India, you need to take off your shelf? So with this level of a digital twin, we can have this granular connection from the physical good to its digital product passport. So there's many advantages here for the Kimberly process that we have kind of done a workshop with them on looking at how to implement these credentials. I won't go on each step of it here, but it does kind of relate to each building block that I've described previously. So for a credential, what this actually means is that, okay, well, we need to have a certificate not only of the diamond, but also who is the member of the organization. So who is the governing body that looks after the trade of diamonds per country. And what we're doing here with verifiable credentials, that it's a form of verifying digital identity and ensuring the accuracy of information related to that physical good. So when we have credentials, we look at this and we say, okay, well, there's the industry body. We have logistics providers, manufacturers, government offices, mining facilities. All of these actors need to have their own digital identity that gets issued to them. And we also need to be able to manage this in real time, that if someone leaves or if there's a role change in the organization, that these people can access the digital identities. All right, so that's an overview. So a very different topic is reforestation with a company called Veritree, where we were looking at efforts here on verified land restoration. So commonly, this is looking at planting new trees in areas that need it the most.
The planet needs healing, more nature, less carbon in the air. Reforestation is one of the cheapest and most effective ways of capturing carbon from the atmosphere. The tree planting industry is rife with problems. Lots of greenwashing, double counting, lack of transparency, and frequently little or no follow-up after the first planting. As a blockchain that aims to exist for the greater good, Cardano wanted to play its part. So we partnered up with a Canadian company, Veritree, which was created to solve these problems by giving companies big and small the opportunity to enforce what they need and share transparency. With Cardano's unique on-chain metadata capabilities, Veritree is able to easily store and share GPS coordinates, photos, and other specific characteristics of restorations. This data is traceable, permanent, immutable, and available to all, solving one of the industry's biggest and growing problems, a lack of trust. This makes it the perfect example of the real-world value that a blockchain can bring. To celebrate this partnership, we decided to push the envelope by launching the world's first global impact challenge. The challenge was simple. Can we get the Cardano community to donate 1 million ADA to plant 1 million trees? The Cardano community answered the call and donated. In just over 3 months, the Cardano community donated over 1 million trees. To prove the power of blockchain, Each of these donors receives a tree planting certificate with the exact location of their donation and other info, which type of tree is used, mangroves in Kenya in this case, making the process hyper-specific and extremely transparent. Whatever happens in the future, the Cardano community can take pride in knowing their efforts led to a forest being restored. The first of many forests that will live on Cardano's blockchain too. Because Veritree is on track to plant hundreds of millions of trees over the next couple of years for their various corporate clients. All that planting will be stored on our blockchain, giving all of their clients a simple and transparent way to help heal the planet that is not just very, very much needed, but also tremendously rewarding.
Nice video? Okay, great. Yeah, so this is one of the projects that I led. And this was a global campaign for reforestation in Kenya, where we raised funding to plant 1 million mangrove trees. And the way that we represented this was through a group of assets on Cardano that represented the funding amount, the amount of trees that were being planted, and then assets that actually looks at the tree that it actually does exist. So, tree planting industry in general has a lot of problems, and a lot of this has to do with ownership. So normally, when we look at these initiatives that say, we also want to do reforestation. One tree is planted, and that same tree is counted 20 times for who the owner is of that single tree. That's a huge level of inefficiency. That's a big issue. You need to have a unified platform that connects all these stakeholders. So I'm the planting organization. I'm the enterprise that's leading out an initiative in my company. And I'm the project manager that's overseeing this forest. So every year, some trees are going to be cut down, new trees are going to be planted. We need to understand the planting site details for every specific time period. These reports need to be made public. And then we need to connect these reports back to the digital assets to actually see and trace, how many trees are still in the ground. And what's really interesting is 90% of organizations involved in restoration, such as tree planting and coral regrowth for the ocean, they fail to fully report on their efforts. And so, when we went down this, we were looking at what's the major industry problem for anything that has to do with climate impact financing. And that's how we kind of came to this solution of tracking the nature-based asset. So there's a lot of components that's involved in here. Main one is how do we collect data from the ground? So how do we collect information from trees in Kenya and make that accessible? And how do we do the on-chain data publication? So what information remains stored off-chain, and what information do we put on a blockchain? And how do we ensure that that link remains constant? So I have a lot of details here that I'll just share with you the presentation so you can kind of see. But this is kind of then just outlining the process of, okay, well, we need to have all these different sensors that's collecting information. There needs to be a process for if people take pictures with their cell phone, that can be stored somewhere, and that all of this can be organized in a proper fashion even before you put the information on a blockchain. So this is a huge project for digitization that needs to be done. Now, if we think about a digital product passport, and I'm a lumber yard and I'm selling wood for buildings. Are they concerned with the source of the wood that it comes from? They absolutely are concerned. And you're definitely concerned about the impact you have on the environment for cutting down trees and replanting trees. That these become requirements for consumers to have that access to this information. So it's a template then for how you can start to collect more info. So when using a blockchain, what we're really able to do is to have these immutable records of tree planting. And this becomes the digital audit report, where it's all of the groundwork now becomes publicly accessible. And we help to ensure that there's no double counting. So now we can also determine ownership and prove one tree has one owner versus one tree and 20 owners. There are other solutions as well, such as greenwashing prevention. And greenwashing is basically the effectiveness of climate finance. How do we ensure that we're spending money in the appropriate way? Okay, so I'll move on to another industry, which is for fan apparel. And this is with a company called Merchandise with kind of the World Lacrosse Championships. Let's see what this has.
Make sure you stay ahead of the competition. And how do your customers know that they're really buying your products? Every year, the global economy loses up to $4.5 trillion to counterfeits and piracy. Why? Property protection uses outdated methods, and with online stores multiplying, customers are constantly faced with unclear choices. Add more than 500,000 brands to the mix, often fighting for attention, and your brand has one of its biggest challenges ever. Epoch Sports knew exactly the risks of inaction, and so they joined forces with the Cardano Foundation and Merchandise to redefine property authenticity and improve fan engagement. During the 2023 World Lacrosse Championship, the brand's limited edition jerseys were embedded with a unique NFC chip. Each one of these chips had its own digital certificate of authenticity connected to the Cardano blockchain. It created an immutable, tamper-proof, and verifiable record to confirm the authenticity of the product and protect the memories made during the championship. All visible in a fully branded platform, showing accurate digital versions of the physical jerseys. Using this digital twin, sponsors offer to tap in where to earn rewards with participating brands, increasing fan engagement and quickly selling out the jerseys. The next generation of property authentication is to protect brands, boost trust, preserve the memories your brand creates, and increase your customers' loyalty. Easy to verify by anyone and great for fan engagement. Powered by Cardano's blockchain.
So, in this example, this is a project that we've done for Merchandise, where we were looking at how can we demonstrate that this is an authentic jersey. So when I go to a sporting event, am I buying the official merchandise, or am I buying merchandise outside somewhere that's the counterfeit good? And what happened here is that we were able to say, yes, we can prove 100% through this NFC chip connection that what you have is the authentic jersey, because there's a digital twin that exists. And that digital twin has a lot more product information that confirms it is real. More than that, what we were looking at is, okay, this is a great starting point to fight against counterfeit goods. We have an easy to use platform to prove that this is authentic. And definitely that helps out brand integrity and fan loyalty. But how? How does having a digital twin of a product increase consumer engagement and fan loyalty? Well, let's see. I hope it's shown here on these slides, but I don't think it is. What we're able to do is actually change the business model. So when we have this digital record that's on a blockchain, we can connect that now to a Web 2 application, which becomes like a portal that says, okay, I have an account and I am now storing all of the assets that I've collected. And when I've registered for this account, now what we have is we have the brands who sponsor the event. They could contact directly these consumers. And they could send them advertisements. You can say, come to the concession stand and get a free beer, or you have VIP seating for the event. We're going to make sure that if you're wearing this jersey that you are on TV. And the jersey itself became the ticket to enter the event. So it's not just about the digital twin, but it's once you have it, what can you do differently to change the way that you interact with the different stakeholders of your industry? The other nice thing to note is that NFC chips or QR codes, this technology is now called a commodity. So most of the suppliers for NFC chips, they provide it at very low cost. So it's not such a barrier to enter when we're looking at applying this type of physical connector to a product that then connects to the digital twin. All right. I think this will be the last segment that I go through, but this is partially why I'm here in Moldova today, is that next week there is a conference called OIV, which is the organization of Vine and Wine. And here I'm looking to replicate what has been done in Georgia, which was a nationwide traceability program for verifying the authenticity of wine. And so let's play this video.
Supply chains travel the globe. It's a multi-step process involving numerous players. Take the wine industry. From planting to harvest to the consumer's tables, a lot happens along the way. It's a complex process, often difficult to verify. And on top of it, the entire wine industry across the world is swarmed with inferior products and outright fakes. To this day, even Georgia, the birthplace of wine itself, is still plagued by unscrupulous businesses. Something had to be done. Georgia's National Wine Agency and the Bolisi Winemakers Association partnered with the Cardano Foundation to develop the Georgian Wine Traceability Program, a groundbreaking solution using the Cardano blockchain to track and trace Georgian wines. Here's how it works. With Cardano's unique advantages, winemakers easily store all relevant information on the Cardano blockchain. The government issued certificates of conformity to comprehensive supply chain data, and even details about the grape's variety. The wineries, the National Wine Agency, then digitally sign the information. Once uploaded to the Cardano blockchain, the information is validated and cannot be tampered with. This guarantees the process meets transparency requirements and complies with trade shipments, plus international data standards set by industry bodies, making it easier for regulators to verify the information. In fact, even if they use different apps, anyone can check and verify that data is authentic, including every consumer. They just need to scan the special QR code created by ScanTrust. And that's it. Next generation traceability. Immutable, transparent information from end to end that's easily available to all. The perfect way to fight counterfeits, tracing the journey of each wine bottle from grape to glass. Georgian wines are authenticated. The extra traceability boosts their credibility. And wine lovers all around the world feel confident choosing the next perfect wine, taking Georgian products into new markets and increasing sales. Supply chain made easier and transparent, all thanks to the power of Cardano's blockchain.
Wow, I guess you didn't know transparency was so cool. But it definitely can be. And so,
Supply chain.
no, thank you, not again. So, I mean, here, this was for ourselves understanding, okay, we need to have real compliant data that's issued by a country and connect this information to the bottle of wine. How do we do that? You know, how can we create this inventory management system that's based on the Cardano blockchain? So first thing was really understanding this supply chain process of the wine industry where data is collected. And what we do then is we figure out the data standards for each segment and create these verifiable data records. And so specifically for the certification, the certificates is not self-reporting. It's certificates that's generated by the National Wine Agency of Georgia. And so what we've done is we've made an identity solution for their National Wine Agency to issue out these blockchain certificates that says this is the right shipment. This is a valid shipment of a wine. The next thing to do is to connect that certificate digitally to the bottle itself. So now we have full transparency that, okay, when I'm picking up this bottle of wine, I'm able to see all this information related to the management of that winery. Normally, you know, this is done every country. They're very good at agricultural products and doing supply chain, you know, data collection and industry certification. Where they're not good is making that information publicly available. And that's where Cardano has really come into play. So what's interesting is like you can see this solution if you scan this QR code right here. And you know that will bring up a web page that actually represents one of the wines that's in the program. And so even thinking about digital product passports, right? The innovation for the wine is this QR code sticker that's no bigger than my thumb, really, that gets put onto a wine bottle that provides you so much comprehensive information related to the authenticity of the wine. We did discover that there were particular issues. Not every winery requests the certificate. So for you to do a sale of wine, you must have this certificate of conformity in place. With this inventory management system, we were able to understand what is the level of compliance being followed. We're also able to see if there's proper labeling being done on the wines. I was enjoying a very nice red wine last night with Tudor, and we're talking about this wine, particularly the vintage from 2018 and now. And the 2018 vintage is worth several hundred euros per bottle. but today's vintage is still really good, but much cheaper. So if I'm the winery, why don't I just take 2018 labels and put it on my wine that I'm selling today? Okay, that happens. 1 out of 5 bottles globally in wine is considered counterfeit because of issues like improper labeling and other issues. It's much more than that. So we need to have this process that really can connect the chemical test reports of a wine and states very clearly, yes, this bottle of wine was made in 2018. This bottle of wine was made in 2024. So that level of information, through this QR code, we make it publicly accessible, and it really prevents you from lying about the product. The other thing was for consumer engagement. As you scan the QR code, now you're able to see much more, like marketing information about the winery itself. You can see where the wine comes from, who the winery is, what's special about this wine. And all of this now becomes a business model innovation. And it's made possible because we have access to the authentic data records about the supply chain and the industry certification. So yeah, I mean, it's a very comprehensive process here of understanding what is this interesting compliance data and data for consumers that we need to collect and we need to present. And the good thing about using blockchain is that it becomes infrastructure. So this is not just for ScanTrust to use. Really, any other company can make use of this data once it's publicly available. And that is kind of the principle of interoperability of different companies and having a network effect. I have other details, but I mean, it's just going more into like the actual history of the pilot. And right now we're in the process of scaling this to 1 million bottles in Georgia with a winery called Teliani Valley, which is a great feat to have as we roll this out across the nation. And again, this is all made possible by understanding market interoperability. So what data did we need to collect? That data was provided to us by OIV. And so what we did in Georgia is instantly accessible to the 50 other countries that follow this data standard. And what that really looks like is this. It looks like, okay, first things first, this is a structure for the supply chain data. This is the structure of the certificate. Now, this information is stored where? It's stored with a National Wine Agency. It's on a data server. Now we have a process that says, well, we want to make this open. Okay, so now when we make it open, we have then a link on the blockchain that allows you to access this information. It's not stored on the blockchain, but we have the verification data that is. And basically what happens then on a blockchain, what we're able to visualize is to say this data hash, I have now checked the off-chain data and I am verifying its authenticity. I'm verifying that this was actually, I have certain rules. This was issued by the National Wine Agency. This supply chain data was confirmed by the winery, and now that gets presented in the front end for visualization.
If certificate was replicated.
If what?
Certificate.
Yes.
For example, I would buy a bottle of wine with the same certificate, so I'm able to see that it was sold maybe last year. So this bottle is fake one?
So you have a certificate and it's from last year, or the bottle is from last year. I mean, well, that's part of this process, is that what we're also able to do is to, we can visualize what certificate connects to what bottle. And for your particular problem, it might sit outside of this solution, right? But it doesn't mean that that problem cannot be solved. Now we just set the process that says, this is the foundational infrastructure, and we need to find out these problems that still exist. And now how do we add in that feature to ensure that this is the real certificate mapping to the right bottle? So I think what's very important to remember is that when we're delivering digital transformation and we're delivering new applications, what we initially launch will not cover every problem in the industry. But it allows us to enable that industry cooperation, the governance oversight by regulatory bodies, industry bodies, and continue to develop more robust solutions that before you did not have, right? So now that we can at least know that, hey, there's a problem here. We didn't know earlier. Last year, we had no idea. Now, with this solution, we know that exists. All right, we're at 12:30 mark. So I knew we were not going to cover this part of the lecture, but if you give me 5 minutes, I can do a quick introduction to digital identity. I see some heads being nodded for the future of digital identity. So we have at Cardano Foundation, a few things. First thing is that we have a very nice blockchain-based ecosystem report. So if you've never had any blockchain-based asset, now you can. You can pick one up. This is from a company called book.io, and you're able to tap this. You're able to redeem this online and receive a digital asset of this ecosystem guide. So Viridian is an open source identity wallet that we've launched on Cardano. And let me highlight here what this does and what problems we're solving.
How do you empower trust in every interaction? And how do you know it's authentic once you do? In healthcare, data compliance protects patients. In supply chains, source validation supports transparency. And in finance, network security prevents fraud. Across industries, identity verification is the foundation of trust. Yet existing solutions fall short. Last year, data breaches affected 1.7 billion records in America. Why? Because we give up control of our credentials, data, and digital identity. Take back control with Viridian, an open source digital identity platform. With Viridian, your organization can protect user data and prevent fraud, support enhanced credential issuance, and ensure interoperability with verifiable data. And with the Viridian wallet, these features are right in your pocket, making self-sovereign identity simple. Privacy first, enterprise grade, future-proof. Discover how Viridian empowers trust in every interaction.
So let's see if you're a switch. There we go. So we need to have a new type of digital identity that's targeting new threats and more complex threats. This is an image that's showing about AI-fueled fraud that is growing rapidly around the world. And it's looking at deepfake fraud from 2022 to 2023. So that's not even this year. So the cyber threats on websites and getting hacks on web pages is just growing dramatically due to this new threat. Generic data hacking is also growing every year. So green is 2023 and blue is 2003. So the way that we use the internet is becoming more complex. We rely on the internet for almost every part of our life. And what's interesting is it takes organizations on average 258 days to identify and contain a data breach. And there's lots of different types of AI-generated fraud that's happening towards businesses. And so with 258 days on average, I mean, that is a huge time for a bad actor to really take advantage of an organization. And so when we looked at this is kind of a fundamental issue that says, well, how can we automate this level of threat detection? And how do we recover on our internet access management whenever there is an attack that's occurred? How do we ensure a life cycle of digital identity solutions? So we've issued an ID, and maybe now we find out a particular individual, they actually faked their credentials. We're looking into criminal spy activity, right? I have a fake passport, and now you've issued me a digital ID on my fake passport. Well, what happens when you discover that's a fake? How do you revoke this digital identity? There are many topics such as this that's kind of gone into this comprehensive identity tool that we have. And what will be interesting as a follow-up today for those interested is to set up an online seminar with our identity team and kind of walk through our vision of identity solutions and how this impacts organizations. I don't have so much time to cover it right now, but I just wanted to give a highlight of kind of what the solution does. And again, it's open source and free to use. And it's really aimed at solving some of the most prevalent issues that's plaguing the digital identity landscape. So with that, I would like to bring us to the close. But is there any questions that anyone has generally about today's presentation or blockchain in general?
I have some questions related to the digital identity. Like, what standards do you use for credential issuance and verification? Is it ISO 18013 that is used by the European Union for the digital identity wallets, or is it something else?
We use something called CARI. CARI is called Key Event Receipt Infrastructure. And this is associated with an organization called Glyph. So Glyph has developed what's called a legal entity identifier. And legal entity identifiers is an approach where we use what's called a bounded digital signatures. And it's a very robust framework for managing identities. This is also compliant with EIDAS and W3C standards. The main benefit here is understanding how we can have a self-sovereign identity system that's based under organizational control. So can we associate a lot of roles and rules to managing digital identity and then the creation of all sorts of verifiable credentials. And so if we think about like digital product passports, for example, you know, if we need to do this at mass scale, we need to ensure that, you know, there's a long list of checkboxes we need to go through in order to have like an enterprise grade solution. And that's what Veridian is targeting.
And the format of the document that you provide is MDoc or another format, like a verifiable presentation format that you are using, structure for it. So this is the MDoc,
JSONs. Is it JSONs?
It might be JSONs. I would need to ask my identity team that particular question. But yeah, that's why I push that as like a follow-up if you're interested in having this, a very big deep dive.
The issue that was discussed by my colleague is speaking about the document format. It must be the MDL, like you are using for driving license in America, with binary format. And also European Union is using the SDGP, it's a JavaScript format, like extended JavaScript tokens. And in case that, for example, you are giving the identity same format, every wallet that is installed and work on the European side can consume and verify that type of document.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's definitely follows under the format of our off-chain data storage. What type of industry standards do we need to follow? Is it compliant? But then again, the next step to that process is, okay, well, how do we connect that then to publicly accessible data records? And how would leveraging blockchain in this equation actually increase data security? And yeah, so very happy to figure out a time to schedule a follow-up for that. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Congratulations, we have made it through the masterclass.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. This was not very deep technically at the level of the last question. I'm not technical myself. I'm starting to figure out more and more, and I'm ready to learn. So if you guys transfer your questions to me, I'll try to answer some of them if I can, and then we'll talk to Cardano Foundation to help us find these answers, or even adjust the direction we're going with our prototyping of different tools that are needed in agencies. So I propose that you connect with us on LinkedIn. I'm available to Potruca on LinkedIn. I just really want to know everyone who wants to move Moldova towards more digitalization, more to not need trust anymore when you're buying a wine or when you're confirming a contract and whatnot. So my dream is to bring the ID signature that we have now, to bring it on the blockchain, and I think this is gonna move things forward really well. Also, I'm very much interested with the DPP passport. and we have some tools with Laser Labs that are already a kind of prototype for that, and we will be working further with, for example, the Agency of Textiles to make a real prototype that works for Moldova. And I also want to say that we have an event on Monday. It's an official side event at the OIV Congress, which is the International Wine Congress starting next Monday at Palatul Republicii. And in the evening at 5:30, we will have a high-level networking event. We're gonna speak there as well, more about wine, but then we can network more, and you can probably feel more how this starts to be implemented in Moldova, because we're working with ONBV since quite a while for reporting by wineries, for supply chain tracking and so on. So, I mean, there's a lot to do, and also Blazer Labs is open to support you in studying. So if you're interested in studying and becoming a blockchain developer, I will give you all the support you need, and I'm sure that Cardano Foundation already did a big part of the work with the Academy. I guess we will share those links. Oh, we have them in the presentation, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to share that with you. About the event, I have a QR code so they can check the Luma page. Are you able to bring it on the screen? I did send it on Telegram, but I don't know if it's so you don't show everything on the screen.
This one?
Yep.
Okay.
The event will have wine, food, and a lot of people from the wine world, like Diana Lazar, Stefania Manzi, Vasile Luca. Maybe you know these guys. They're big here in wine, and I just invite you all to become more friends, more acquainted. Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you'd like to take something on this table before you go, please do so. I also have my business card here in case you want to reach out to myself for any specific questions. Please feel free to do so. And yes, thank you for being a great audience. It's fantastic to share this information with you. And yeah, I'm a big supporter of Moldova 2030, 100% digital. Thank you.
Let's do it. Thank you all. Let's have some more coffee, chat a little bit.